Joining us for a conversation is Michael Dufresne, President and Principal at Apex Geoscience, a company providing professional geological consulting, exploration management, and technical reporting to Canadian and international clientele. Mr. Dufresne, thank you for joining us today, sir.
Good morning, Maurice, and thank you for having me. And it's a great morning and heading into fall here.
Long overdue interview. I understand you've been out in the field as of late, so thank you for accommodating us with your busy schedule. Just to set the tone here, can you please provide the audience with a little background on your firm and how you fit into the development of mining projects?
Sure. So Apex Geoscience is a full-service professional geological consulting firm. I'm one of the original partners that started in 1992, and so 31 years. But we actually flowed out of another consulting firm in Edmonton named Trigg, Willett and Olson, and they started their business back in the 70s. I joined in the middle 80s, and I've still work with a lot of those people from the 1980s. So we also have provide services, boots on the ground exploration, right up through feasibility reports. We provide personnel for mine site, underground, and open pits. And I myself have a lot of exploration that goes right from grassroots, greenfields type exploration right through to mining, and particularly in the resource environment. So yes, a wide breadth of experience and for geological services to the mining sector.
Well, I have to ask you, with 40 years experience and boots on the ground, looking at a macro perspective and the geopolitical events that are occurring right now, what are your thoughts on the natural resource space, in particular, not just the precious metal prices and the base metal prices, but just for someone who's investing in resource stocks? What are your thoughts on the prices? Because I think a lot of us are under the impression that the prices should be higher under these environments.
Yeah, look, 40 years, I've seen the bottoms, many bottoms. Look, from my perspective, I see, I was a little frustrated with the mining sector in the late 90s, early 2000s, with a real bad low that we had there. But this move to an electric society across the world, and it's not just, North America, it's the whole Western world and even a lot of third world countries. This move to electric means more metals. It's a sacrifice. It's a trade-off here. We're trading hydrocarbons in for metals. We need metals to conduct electricity and to deal with EV type applications. And there's no getting away from it. So I'm quite bullish about where our sector is going. The market has been awful for junior mining companies, right? The last 6 to 18 months. But gold is still pushing $2,000 an ounce. Copper still $3.50 a pound, and it can go a lot lower, but it can go a lot higher. And my expectation long term is that I think we're still in for a long term resource bull, and particularly critical minerals, battery minerals, but even gold with the geopolitical situation where it is. So I'm pretty fired up where the future goes.
So what you're basically saying is, don't complain about a sale.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, I think actually right now for the mining sector, we have actually pretty good metal prices. It's a buying opportunity, honestly. Pick your 5 or 10 best stocks that you follow and you like the people. It's a people business. So important about people, and buy them and hang on to them. You don't be looking for short-term gains right now. It's a difficult market. You've got to buy these and hang on to them for a while.
And we're going to highlight one of those said value propositions later in this interview, but let's get back on topic here. Now, you stated your team has worked on numerous projects, and most recently, one of these projects is now being put into production by B2 Gold at its Black River Goose Project, which hosts an NPV of 1.1, listen to this, ladies and gentlemen, billion. Okay, walk us through your involvement on the project.
Yeah, certainly. So Trigg, Willett, Olson, the sort of founding consulting firm that I work with out of Edmonton, actually were the discoverers of this project. The principal, a gentleman by the name of George Willett, worked with Echo Bay Mines, put Lupin into production. Lupin was the was the cash cow that allowed Echo Bay to develop into a mining giant for 20 years before it got taken out by Kinross, 30 years. And they did this little reconnaissance project in the northeast part of the Slave Province and made the initial discoveries at George Lake and Goose Lake. And I was employed by Tredwell and Olson as a senior geologist in the middle 1980s, and went on to be the chief geologist for the project, for the entire project, through the late 1980s. Look, it's a discovery team. There was no one of us that's responsible for discovery. It's always a team. And there were a team of a half a dozen people, but I specifically worked at Goose Lake and Boot Lake and George Lake. And, it's interesting. This is the Arctic. It takes 40 years from discovery to put it into production. That's not unusual for a gold mining operation. It takes a big lead time. And I know that's going to lead on to another question. But look, I spent a lot of time there, was there when the first resources were being defined. The company subsequent have done a fantastic job of taking it, several steps further than we did. And it should be a great project, and it should be a cash cow for B2Gold, honestly.
Well, that's a big, big feather in your cap. And now your team is working on another feather, if you will, on one of the largest prospective land packages in British Columbia for Grizzly Discoveries, which includes multiple historic mines and resources. What led you to this historic mining camp where 8 million ounces of gold and 700 million pounds of copper have been mined?
Good morning, everybody. This is what we do on Monday morning. Mike and Sebastian Sebo are out looking at the new ground we acquired. Them samples up there came back at 1 ounce plus of gold. And look at this. This is so mineralized. My knees are shaking taking this video.
Hey, Grizzly fans. Kind of an exciting discovery up here above the Imperial. Got some metaseds here with some really strong gossan and hematite, iron, limonite, even some manganese alteration. Really got some calcarb running along this structure too, because she's effervescent. Definitely grabbing a sample here and gonna keep our eye out for more. Hope to keep you posted with more stuff, guys.
Yeah, sure. That's it's a Echo Bay related story as well. Went to visit the Republic Mine, which is basically the mines on the south side of the border. The Grizzly package is right up against the U.S. border, and it borders the Republic Mining District. The geology is the same across the border, 50 miles south of the border to 50 miles north of the border there. And Echo Bay was putting several little epithermal deposits into production in the late 1980s. I went down and visited. We did some work and had a lot of discussions about the same geology on the Canadian side of the border, but not a lot going on. There are a lot of historic mines, but not any real exploration, modern exploration going on. And that's happened. I'm telling you, there's been very little real modern exploration for 30 years there in that district, in the Greenwood District, which is the district I'm talking about. Grizzly has over 160,000 acres there. And, that's one of the secrets to a good project. And this is no different to Back River. Back River has that kind of acreage, 100,000 or so acres. Having big land packages is a very important part. It's not just about having those couple old mines. It's about having a package to explore. And, I'd see a lot of, from the late 1980s when I first visited the Greenwood and Republic District to today, see tremendous potential there, both from the historic mines, but also the package and the geology that's there.
You referenced the word big. I would say colossal. 160,000 acres. That's massive.
Yeah, it is. It's effectively, 22,000 acres in a township. So, it's effectively 8 townships. To put it in U.S. land terms, it's a huge land package, and that's allowed us to do a lot of systematic exploration. And look, the rocks are not that well exposed. There's volcanic cover rocks it's not easy exploration. It's highly treed. It's all treed. So it takes time, and we've been slowly getting our database in great shape, doing the work that should have been done many years ago, and doing systematic exploration that hoping that will lead to discovery.
Now, as mentioned, the historical mines in the Greenwood District include many historical mines, open pits, underground workings. You got ore dumps, and that for various reasons stopped production. Now, can you explain some of the reasons why these historical operations left some of these high-grade ore bodies? Talking about economics, technology, and geopolitics.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, the main mining going concern in the Greenwood District is the Lexington Golden Crown mines, and there was a mill constructed. There was an underground constructed in the middle 1990s at Lexington. In 2008, Merit Mining decided that they would, obviously from the middle 90s, the construction there, we hit $250 gold, we hit less than $1 a pound copper, and they basically went into receivership in the late 1990s with the downturn in metal prices. Mm-hmm. Subsequent to that, Merit in the middle 2000s, 2006, 2005 recognized the potential of the area. Merit Mining bought the properties, built a brand new mill in 2008, and put Lexington back into production. They put it in production. They were funded by a fund out of Europe, who also was funding an African venture. And they didn't have a lot of capital reserves. They were making concentrates and sending them to China. And in October of 2008, we all know what happened. There was a collapse in the financial system, in the markets with the mortgages. And that fund in Europe that was funding Merit and the project went under, completely collapsed, and they had no cash reserves. And so they shut down. They had only been in production. They had been in trial production and official production for about 2 months and trial production for about 8 months. And they had to wrap it up and go on care and maintenance. And so 2008 was the last restart. And, they have a brand new tailings pond. They've got a brand new mill, basically ran less than a year. And they've got a 6 to 8 10-year permitted tailings pond. So they've got all the permits in place. About 2017, Golden Dawn, 2016, Golden Dawn cut a deal with the group that bought the thing out of receivership, and they started some exploration, and we're looking at a restart. But honestly, the CEO unfortunately had a health problem and had to back off the company. And again, that company now is basically gone off the board and into receivership because it just has not been able to raise the money to get this thing restarted. So there's been all the reasons but the price of the metal but the prices of metals that have really caused problems for that particular operation. And that's sort of the cornerstone, because that's got a brand new mill in the tailings pond. And, even if Grizzly were to produce, we would be looking at toll treating through that mill, or potentially in future, we might look at hopefully going after that mill. But that's in the future, and we may or may not be able to get that mill. But it's a cornerstone of what our plans are there.
Speaking of the future, with your experience and your work to date in the Greenwood District, do you see the development towards production as a short-term or a long-term prospect?
Good question. I see both. I see there's potential for a short-term. On Grizzly's land alone, there's several mines that we are planning on drilling and putting resources together on. We have old, what we call development dumps. In Australia, we refer to this as mining bullock. But they're dumps effectively, and they're not waste dumps necessarily. They're development dumps. So they had a lot of low grade material in. Let's face it, in the the 1900s right up to the 2000s, what was being mined was half ounce gold per ton type material to ounce gold per ton type material. Today we mine a lot lower grades, and so the development. This is why everybody gets focused on sometimes these dumps. Is this development war where they developed in the low grade trying to get to the high grade often can be it could be a tenth of an ounce per ton or a quarter ounce per ton. There's often a lot of good material in these dumps, and there's literally hundreds of thousands of tons of dumps around the Greenwood area, a number of which are on our lands, but also on some of our competitors' lands.
Well, that's interesting. So, but from a time perspective, could this be less than 10 years?
Oh, I would suggest the permits are still active for the Greenwood Mill and the tailings pond. And from the work that we were at one point doing for Golden Dawn, they were pretty confident with some upgrades to the mill that they can be in production in a year. And I see enough near surface or at surface gold copper, and it's designed for gold copper, so we would be going after both copper and gold. There are enough surface showings to surface pit opportunities, as well as these dumps that could get into production very early. If you got that mill up and running in 8 to 12 months, I think you could identify feed for it for a year while you've got your undergrounds going on a couple of the targets that do have tremendous underground potential.
Well, that's a very compelling proposition. So less than 12 months, you could be in production. But what that really does, if for someone listening, is it allows the organic growth to occur without the share dilution. And that is a strategic competitive advantage that you have that many of your peers in the space don't have. And that's something you have to take be very cognizant of when you're in this space, is what are the competitive advantages that each company has compared to their peers. In reference to that as well, yes, sir, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so I agree. I mean, I 1 year to get the mill up and running, and I would say in a time frame of 2 years, you could be well into production and funding your exploration out of production. I think there's also the long-term potential to find multi-million ounces there, and that's the end game. And what Grizzly has been doing is looking for the big deposits, and Phoenix was one of those. It was a 1.2 million ounce. 600 million pounds of copper, and I don't think they got it all. That's from the early 1900s to the 1970s, mined under some pretty difficult conditions for metal prices, and I think there's still a lot there to find, both at Phoenix and in our ground. So, I think there is short-term production potential to fund exploration, and then there's long-term, big NPV type potential on a big discovery.
Oh, we're looking forward to it. And full disclosure, Grizzly Discoveries is a sponsor partner of Proven and Probable, and we are proud shareholders. And adding on to the shareholder list, of course, or I shouldn't say adding on, but the CEO, Mr. Brian Grizz Testo, has been buying shares recently in the market. You can look that up on SETI. But may I ask you this as well, sir? Do you have a position in the company as well?
I do, and have been accumulating, not selling.
Likewise, same here, sir. Last question, sir. What did I forget to ask?
Oh, look, I think you covered it fairly well. The one of the things, maybe a little bit of the history. I would talk a lot about the Republic District. Well, that was where Hecla got its start. Hecla mined 2 million ounces before Echo Bay ever arrived in the district, and the famous Republic mine is where Hecla got its start. So this geology is very permissive for finding good-sized, high-grade gold deposits that can basically be company makers. I think it was in the case of Hecla. Certainly helped Echo Bay along its path, and certainly could be for companies like Grizzly and other juniors that are exploring in the area.
And the website for Grizzly Discoveries is grizzlydiscoveries.com. Ladies and gentlemen, we're honored to have Mr. Dufresne here. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, sir. Wishing you, Apex Geoscience, and your partnership with Grizzly Discoveries the absolute best, sir.
Thank you very much, Maurice. I really enjoyed it, and happy to come back again in a few months when hopefully over the next 6 months to a year, we'll have some decent drill results to report.
Looking forward to it, sir.
Thank you very much.
The information presented on Proven and Probable is provided for educational and informational purposes only, without any express or implied warranty of any kind, including warranties of accuracy, completeness, or fitness for any particular purpose. The information is not intended to be and does not constitute financial, investment, or trading advice, or any other advice. You should not make any financial, investment, or trading decision based on any of the information presented without first undertaking independent due diligence and consultation with a professional broker or competent financial advisor.